It isn't clear exactly whether Egyptian Atonism, Judaism, or Zoroastrian Mithraism fully originated the monotheistic idea. Okay. It is likely they shared these teachings and they could have also been parallel realizations, right? One takeaway from monotheism, of course, is an understanding that the source of all goodness, right, and all evil is one. The source of all things is one, right? So monotheism really, it's a recognition of the all in the one, right? Christianity has spread all over the world, and yet its particular understandings vary greatly depending on its host culture, right? Their specific worldview. One thing is for sure, the ancient religions and mystic traditions all have the human experience in common, right? We all live under the same stars. We all are born. We think about our, what's going to happen to us when we die. All of these things, there's so many, there's the human experience around the world can vary, yes, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it's very similar. And so, of course, a lot of our theology and philosophy, there would be a lot of parallels. So regardless of culture, the human condition is essentially the same. You're born, you die. Our objective nature is also the same. And so the slight differences between these monotheistic religions of peace, right, are all bound to have similarities in this respect. Religions of peace share with and influence each other, while religions of control attempt to dominate the spiritual conversation. They try to tell, oh, you're wrong. We've got it figured out. We're going to show you. We're going to get rid of all that nonsense that you believe, right? If a religion of control that doesn't recognize that it doesn't make full recognition that the human experience is the same for everyone, and that people, given enough contemplation and meditation and thought and discussion, will invariably arrive at very similar types of worship, and will envision more or less similar deities, right? Not of course everywhere. There's the East and the Western worldviews are quite different. One is a little more mature and has had more time to develop than the other, of course. So integrating the mysteries of several religions and seeing their common elements is a natural human quest for truth for the seeker, right? So if you're a student of the occult, if you want to go into your own spiritual practice deeper, it would really help you to learn about some completely different religions. Even go to some religious services, right? Find some completely different ways to worship and just see the parallels, see the similarities, right? Ultimately, it is this quest for understanding, this quest for reaching the higher self, to coming into this Christ consciousness, as it were. This is the quest for the threefold flame, and this consists of love, power, and wisdom. Integrating those three in the human heart, which strengthen the magician, right, and weaken the sorcerer. So in many stories, identifying the sorcerer is easy and often conveyed in a way which appear quite obvious to the audience, right? That's at least in stories. However, in real life, sorcerers among us don't reveal themselves so plainly. They often present themselves publicly as magicians, right? Or magi, or virtuous people, okay? People that are here to help you, people that their only drive in life is the betterment of society. This is how many sorcerers present themselves. And they often come with a message of peace and prosperity for all. Okay? I'm sure you can think of some examples of people that present themselves. They are sorcerers that present themselves as magi, right? A wolf in sheep's clothing. Secretly, the sorcerer, however, intends to control the outcome for himself and his covenant, betraying the public trust completely, albeit in secret. The sorcerer expends great effort in order to keep their true operations from being revealed to the light of truth. One of the sorcerer's most effective tactics is the art of misdirection. This allows the sorcerer to orchestrate wrongdoing in the public arena, only to blame it on rival magicians or rival sorcerers, accusing others of wrongdoing and thereby shifting the focus away from themselves. Now, a highly effective variation of this tactic in modern day is called the false flag event. This is accomplished when the sorcerer orchestrates an attack against himself or his constituents or his friends or allies, right? His own people. And then the sorcerer proceeds to lay blame at the feet of a predetermined adversary, right? So you attack yourself intentionally, and then you lay the blame at someone else's feet, right? The sorcerer will then offer a ready-made solution to keep himself and everyone else who was affected safe from future attacks by this presumed adversary. A rush to judgment and an acceptance of this solution by the sorcerer's constituents leads them further into bondage. While both the creative and destructive forces of the universal way, or Tao, are embodied in all of us, right? We have this good and evil in both, in not in equal measure. It can fluctuate, but we have this within us. There comes a recognition and a choice which is made by the seeker, made by you, made by me, right? Made by all of us, so as to determine the ultimate trajectory of one's path in life, right? You can go down the path of the dark side for a while, and then you can change course, right? You can change course. Yes, you can go one way and the other way, but eventually your overall trajectory is going to be towards the Magi or the sorcerer. Typically, you're not going to have what I'm saying is your inner Magi and sorcerer energy. You're capable of both. It's incredibly rare to have just a completely 50-50 split, right? You're going in one respect or another, you're going one way or another. Remember, there's millions of different respects that you can use your energy. This isn't just in an objective sense, right? A trap that many people fall into when they're making statements in the general sense is that they're not thinking about all of the different aspects from which they're making this objective statement. You have to think of all of the small little aspects where you could be good or evil. There's not just this person's evil and everything they do is evil, right? Well, that's not accurate at all, right? You have to think a little more. You have to fine tune your thinking. You have to tune in a little bit better to actually see the difference there. So, do you wish to move with less friction in your body and mind, going with the Tao? Or do you unknowingly create friction in your body and mind by going against this natural force? Right? Every seeker's path is their own, but every path ultimately leads to moksha or dukkha. Okay? Moksha is liberation, whereas dukkha is suffering. Now you can see the difference between moksha and dukkha in the sense of the Magi and the Sorcerer, right? This path of the Magi is liberation. It isn't to say that it's an easy path. It isn't to say that it's a path that does not contain sorrow, that does not contain tragedy, right? It's not to say any of these things, but it's to say that how you meet this sorrow, this tragedy, how you meet things, you can either meet them with fear and you can go down the dark road of the Sorcerer, right? Or you can accept, you can surrender, you can meet them with love, right? And take the path of the Magi, right? It's not what happens to you, of course. We've all heard this. It's how you respond. It's not the things that happen to you. It's how you respond, right? Tragedies, the tragedy, take the Star Wars story, for example. Some tragic things happen to Luke Skywalker. He loses his father to the dark side, gets his hand chopped off, right? How does he respond? He takes the path of the Magi in his response, right? Some terrible things happen to Anakin Skywalker, right? How does he respond? Ultimately with fear. And then the Return of the Jedi, then he come at the very end, right? Darth Vader has this awakening, right? So you can take this path, this trajectory, and then all of a sudden, it can shift. And that's just an energy shift. That's all it is, right? So the non-seeker, which has not discovered their inner light, risks moving forward on their path in the dark, guided only by the loud and confident voice of the Sorcerer. So what I'm saying here is that if you're not on your path, if you're not exploring this, and you'll see many examples around you of people who have not started on the path, they look to others for guidance, for leadership, for example, right? We all need effective leaders. We all need good people, wise people, right, to tell us, to help us understand. But ultimately, we make the decisions for ourselves. But if you haven't started on the path, maybe you're listening to this politician or that person, or, and they may talk a good game, right? But they're just a sorcerer in the presentation of a Magi. They're pretending to be a Magi, but really they're a sorcerer. Well, if you haven't discovered your own inner light, because once you discover your own inner light and you're on the path, then you can sense, this person, I don't think I should have, I shouldn't let this person have any sway over me, because I can see what this person really is, right? Because once you've started on your path to a certain degree, and you can see yourself, you can see other people a little more plainly, even though they may not realize what you see, right? So if you haven't started on the path, you may find yourself guided by others, right? Even the sorcerer, even if the sorcerer is on their path, they're not guided by others, right? No one's telling, they're not being influenced by others, but they're being influenced by their own fear, right? If you take the Magi path, you're influenced by your own light. Okay. So if you're not starting on the path and you put your faith in others to make these certain decisions or to tell you what path to take or what direction to go, you will be led by the sorcerer, right? The sorcerer is confident. They're in control, right? They're warm. They're all of these things. Many of them appear as they are they appear to you as the Magi. For it is the sorcerer who controls, right? And it is the Magi which liberates. So you can easily tell who the sorcerer is because they're trying to convince you why you should do something, right? Why it's in your best interest. They're trying to control the outcome, essentially. Whereas the Magi is saying, listen, this is what I believe to be true. This is how I think things should go. I'm leaving it up to you. It's your choice ultimately. But they're not compelling. The Magi doesn't try to force the outcome or compel you, right? The sorcerer is the controller. So if you feel like, well, there's a little bit of control to this, then even if they're presenting themselves in a nice, they seem to be an enlightened being, they may not be, right? So both forces of creation and destruction in the universe are needed. We need the Magi, we need the sorcerer. They're not going away, right? As for either one to fully prevail would most certainly cause insufferable consequences to come over our reality. Remember that tension I talked about between the Magi and the sorcerer? Our very reality, our existence depends on that tension between the two, right? There's that tension. That's where we live. That's what's made everything possible, okay? So a world completely ruled by evil will invariably and ultimately consume itself, and it will cease to exist, right? Think about, if you take that to its logical conclusion and just think about, okay, what if everything is evil? What if everything, there was just evil, right? Well, it would just be a matter of time before it consumed itself, right? Now, think about the other extreme. A world completely ruled by good. Okay. Take all of that, take it to its extreme, right? Where you get everything you want, everything goes your way, everything happens perfectly for you. Okay. To the point where you can predict without fail that everything you do, everything you try, everything is going to be a success. Everything's going to work. You're never going to feel bad. You're never going to have to reevaluate some mistakes you made, right? That's going to lead you into a world that is predictably flat and hopeless, okay? Because you have nothing to compare it to. You have nothing. You don't know what something is unless you know what something else is. That's just the nature of our reality, right? We don't know what darkness is until we know what light is, and vice versa. It's in that tension. It's in that opposition. And when I say opposition, the opposition between two forces are actually working together to build this middle path, right? So either extreme of all evil or all goodness is not a world that could be possible in this universe. Maybe in some other multiverse universe, but to us that's irrelevant because the rules of our universe, at least the way they seem to be, require attention between goodness and evil. That isn't to say there's a balance between goodness and evil. In fact, I think that that opposition between good and evil, right, is there's always this kind of ebb and flow. There's this push-pull kind of thing happening, right? That's more of how it operates, right? Just think about the Yuga systems. We're in the Kali Yuga now, right? And the Kali Yuga is we're at the lower part, right? And we're coming out of the Kali Yuga now. And coming out of the Kali Yuga, we're in a dark time now, but we're coming out of that dark time, right? And we're moving into a higher type of existence, and people are waking up, right? Well, you wouldn't know how great you had it unless you could look back and go, man, those times, those weren't good times, but now are good times, right? So you can have this gratitude about that, right? You can have gratitude in every moment for being alive, but you can also contrast. Man, today has been a great day. I'm so glad. Yesterday I just wasn't feeling, oh man, I was in just a totally terrible place, but today I feel amazing, right? Try living where you win everything all the time and everything's good and you can never lose. You're going to be in a flat, even plane, and eventually you're just going to be unaffected, right? So think these things through all the way, take them to their logical conclusion, and let me know if I'm missing something here. Of course, it's this middle ground from which existence is preserved, right? In the Hindu pantheon, you have the Trimurti, right? Which is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And they're essentially the forces of creation, destruction, and preservation. So things are being built up over here, coming into existence, unfolding, being created, right? And at the same time, they're dissolving, right? We dissolve into the ground, we die, there's things that are decaying. You have these two forces, and right in that middle ground is the preservation, right? There's this preservation happening between those two, right? So just as most things initially spread through a civilization because they are shown to be good and of great benefit to people, it doesn't take long for the sorcerer to attempt to control this and keep the great benefit only for himself. Now, things are initially good because when something starts, things are created and they grow out of this goodness, okay? Because that is in alignment with the universal law of creation. Things are created. Things blossom, flourish, grow, creation, right? Only after things are created does then the sorcerer see that and try to control it, try to keep it a certain way, keep it for himself. It's all about control for the sorcerer, right? So the sorcerer accuses the Magi of being naive as to the true way of the world, right? The sorcerer should ultimately be rejected, of course, because it is their misunderstanding. It is the misunderstanding of the sorcerer, okay? It is the misunderstanding and their rejection of the Tao, which puts them on the path to suffering, right? The sorcerer is like the no-nonsense type of person that looks at this happy-go-lucky Magi and says, "You're so naive. You don't know anything about the world, and you're so naive. you don't know how things work, right? However, if the Magi is recognizing things as they are and accepting them in the moment and having gratitude, right? That can be seen as being naive to the sorcerer, but in fact, it is the sorcerer who is refusing to accept the very essence or the true essence of reality. So it's the sorcerer who is the naive one, right? Having said that, all of us experience fear. We feel negative emotions from time to time. That's the inner sorcerer, right? How far we go into that, how much how much control we let that have over us is another story, right? Even the greatest Magi's had trepidation. They had fear, right? Even the greatest among us have fear. But having that recognition of, oh, when this fear comes up in me, I can go down that path and become the sorcerer and lose my humanity and try to control things, but that's not in alignment with the way the universe works. So why am I doing it? Right? Just having that recognition, for me at least, has helped. And I hope that it helps some of you as well to kind of understand this teaching, right? And this teaching, of course, there's a lot of Buddhism wrapped up in here. There's a lot of Eastern mysticism, right? So the sorcerer is essentially fearful, but so is the Magi, right? Like I said, the Magi has fear, but the Magi does not allow fear to take over. Fear's not in the driver's seat, right? Fear is there, right? But it's not in the driver's seat. This is the teaching that is in Star Wars with the Jedi and the Force and everything, right? This is what it's about. The sorcerer whom is able to heal their fear with love becomes the Magi. Or if they surrender, because that's the thing, right? Darth Vader had to allow his son in. He had to surrender to love in order to take his helmet off and have one last moment with his son and connect in that way. All he had to do was surrender. That's all he had to do, right? The Magi who hides his or her heart away from the abyss becomes the sorcerer. What I mean by that is the abyss is the inevitable. It's a place where we are all going. The earth is going there. The sun is going there. Everything's going there. Everything in our universe comes into creation. It unfolds into existence. It is there for a time. And then slowly, but surely, it decays and eventually it goes back into the abyss, right? All things from Shiva return to Shiva, right? That's the abyss. So if you hide your heart away, if you attempt to escape, right? There is no escape. But if you're trying to escape and that escape, through that escape, you are motivated by fear of what's going to happen to you after, right? Then you are going the path of the sorcerer, and you'll be less lifelike. You will be less human. You will be less lively, right? Think about, I see this with people that I can just tell. I watch people all the time, and I can just see that they want to be like more in the moment, but they're afraid of that abyss, right? They're afraid of just throwing themselves out. And the big secret with that is, and I hope you guys learn this by the time you're 25, right? Not 45. The secret is if you open your heart to the abyss, if you open your heart to the darkness, and if you love, truly love into the darkness, love into the mystery of when I die, I don't know where I'm going to go, but you know what? I'm going to love into it anyway, right? Then it ceases to have any kind of fear. It ceases to have any power over you. And then all that's left is, the only thing that's left after all of that burns away, all of that fear, is just pure love, right? That's all that's left for you. Not a bad deal, to be honest. Not a bad deal at all. So in our modern day, now I'm going to shift away from the esoteric stuff for a little bit and talk about some modern day Magi versus sorcery. I'll give you a prime example that you can use in your life. So in modern day, the original benefit of word magic is often used to control the desired outcome for the wielder. Okay? It seems in our society that less and less people are using their words for truth, but rather for self-preservation, just to preserve what they have, to keep what they have. Sounds like the sorcerer, right? Of course. So let's look at a practical example of this in the world that we live in today.